It was the dawn of the third age of podcasting, 30 years after the series had launched.
The Babylon podcast was a dream given form. Its goal, to discuss the place where humans and aliens could work out their differences peacefully.
It's a port of call, home away from home for established fans, newbies, John, Blaine, and guests.
Humans and aliens wrapped in 2,500,000 tons of spinning metal, all alone in the night.
It can be a dangerous place.
Wait, what?
But it's our last, best hope for peace.
This is the story of the last of the Babylon stations.
The year is 2024.
The name of the podcast is
Babylon 5, 30 years later. Hello, and welcome to Babylon 5, 30 years later, the podcast where we look at episodes of Babylon 5 and in detail 30 years after they were broadcast. We as myself, Blaine Dowler, and I am on my second time through viewing this series, but I've also read the scripts previously, and I am joined by Babylon 5 newbie, John Wilson. How you doing, John?
Hello, hello. This is only your second time through? For some reason, I had the impression
Yes.
you'd watched all the way through it more than that. That's okay. Not judging, just surprised.
Yeah, it's one of those shows where I find it's not conducive to jumping in and just watching a good one here and a good one there. I know when I get back into it, it's going to be pilot all the way through. So it's a bit of a commitment.
Not to immediately talk about Star Trek on a Babylon 5 show like we tend to do all the time, but I have heard that said about modern Star Trek, how 60s and 90s Star Trek, you can just kind of watch an episode, and it's the episode where this happens. And they're science fiction stories, and they have, a thing that gets, done during that episode, and an idea or a moral or whatever. But modern Star Trek, you can't really do that with, because it's also serial storytelling, which is what is much more in vogue these days. But this is very much like that. We're reading chapters of a book, and while it's not every episode on a dramatic cliffhanger that needs you to come back and watch the next episode, which is what TV is like now, it's still very much, if not chapters in a book, short books in a series.
Yeah, the whole Babylon 5 was structured as a novel. That's for sure. And yes, the 1-2 punch combination of the popularity of TV on DVD sales by season and Netflix being out there shifted what networks were expecting.
Mm-hmm.
In the 80s, it was very hard to do serialized television because they were afraid and were somewhat justified by the ratings at the time. If the audience missed an episode of a serialized show, they tended to not come back.
Right.
Because they were afraid they were missing the story and whatnot. With Netflix and DVDs, well, it reached the point where, no, it is reasonable to expect that your fans are going to start from episode 1 and watch them all in sequence. So then the networks started getting approval for serialized storytelling, which writers had frequently been asking for over the years because it leads to much richer stories.
It does lead to much richer stories.
Yes, so that while that is certainly true of the streaming Star Treks, it is not unique to Star Trek now. It's, as you said, it is definitely
It's just one of the few franchises that has plenty of installments from both eras to contrast. But yeah, we are not here to talk about Star Trek. We are here to talk about the long Twilight struggle between Star Trek and Babylon. No, just kidding.
No, we are looking at Season 2, Episode 20, The Long Twilight Struggle, which had a U.S. air date of October 18th, 1995, or another date in that same week. Written by J. Michael Straczynski, as all episodes will be until we have one blip in Season 5. And this is the third episode directed by John C. Flynn III, who is also the director of photography for the series. And he directed one episode in Season 1, and then he's doing 2 per season for Seasons 2 through 5 for the rest of our series.
Alrighty.
All right, so as a quick plot synopsis, I'll try to make this quick, but
there's
kind of a lot happening this week. Yes. In the pre-credits teaser, we start with Lord Rifa, who has summoned Londo to the Centauri homeworld, and they are ready to perform an all-out assault on the Narn homeworld. They just need Londo to call in his friends because they've intercepted a coded transmission about a Narn assault on the Centauri supply chain that would have a huge impact on the war and put the Narn in a stronger position than they have been. They are not in good shape. And Londo is very hesitant to call in his friends again. He's starting to have concerns and misgivings about those allies, but he wants Centauri triumphant and powerful again. So he acquiesces, although it is under the stipulation that we never call upon these particular friends and allies again. That is one of the conversations we have in parallel that's introduced in the teaser and goes through Act 1. Another one is a conversation between G'Kar and Justen, his uncle and a Narn war leader, talking about that attack they're planning on Garage 7 and the outpost, as well as another plot thread between Draal and Sheridan and Delenn on the station, because Draal has said, yeah, it's time for us to officially meet. So these are the primary plot developments as we're going. So when Sheridan and Delenn meet Draal, in what I would say is probably the C plot, we learn that, Draal's been keeping tabs on everything. He forms an alliance with Sheridan in what he describes as the conspiracy of light directed at his own government, although they decide to keep that alliance a secret for now, including the fact that anyone is alive on the planet running the Great Machine. Draal senses distress calls and sends Sheridan and Delenn back to the station before calling for one of the aides and assistants who helps keep the machine going, but apparently Zathras is never there when you're looking for him. Now, in probably the B plot, that's when we have G'Kar dealing with the assault on his homeworld, and the assault by the Centauri is incredibly effective. It is not going well, so as painful as it is for G'Kar, he eventually comes to Sheridan requesting sanctuary on the station because he's going to need it. He is the last living member of the Kari. The Centauri are destroying that along with everything else through their illegal use of mass drivers. And then the third, and I would say the A plot here, is the one with the Centauri, where we can see Londo looking at the effects of his acts. Yes, he wants Centauri running Narn again, but he is not thrilled with the inhumanity of mass drivers. He objected when they were suggested. So he knows that this is a bad path, but it seems like he's saying, well, no, the ends will justify the means. So he has called in the Shadows, who make quick work of the Narns who were attacking Garage 7, so that the rest of the Centauri forces could hit that Narn homeworld. And we wrap it up with Londo in council chambers saying, well, in order to honor this peace agreement that we have, now that the war is over, they want to send G'Kar back to Centauri for trial because of his request for sanctuary. That will not happen, but he does demand that G'Kar is ejected from the council chambers since he is no longer an official ambassador in any capacity whatsoever. So while the station personnel are clearly on the side of the Narns in this conflict, there's also limits to what they can and cannot say in their objections. So they accept Londo's terms with the exception of allowing them to remove G'Kar from the station. And then we wrap up with Delenn introducing Sheridan to the Rangers and saying a little bit about them. It's also worth mentioning, and I forgot to, that G'Kar did get some warning that the Centauri were going for the Narn homeworld through Dr. Franklin, who'd heard it from one of the patients, and Franklin understood what that meant and wanted to make sure G'Kar knew about it without causing a panic.
Right, because the strategic move that he had heard was that they were abandoning smaller conflicts and bypassing smaller strategic targets. And he says back in our last war, when the Minbari were passing by Mars and other colonies, is because they were heading straight for Earth. So these guys might be heading straight for the Narn homeworld. So I am going to quibble with your use of A plot and B plot and such with Londo and G'Kar, because to me, those are just their roles in the same story. they don't interact really very much. And so they're kind of separate character tracks. But to me, it seems like they are just involved in the same story, just from two different sides.
Yeah, I guess they're A plot and B plot, like, the characters in Mad Bad World or Rat Race have their own plot lines, but it's all one mode of driving simultaneously.
Yeah, they're both responding to the same events.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one. You mentioned, I think it was last week, that 2 of the 3 highest rated episodes of the season are still yet to come. And I happened to notice on MDib that this is one of those 2. This episode and The Coming of Shadows, which are the bookends of the war, those are the tied for highest rating for the season with a 9.2. And the season finale comes up third with a 9.1. So yeah, this was intense. There was a lot here. Pretty crazy.
Yeah. This is, looking at the top 10, The Coming of Shadows is number 5, and this is number 6.
For the overall series?
For the overall series. So there's still 4 episodes that are coming out higher than either of those. And then, yes, you said the season finale is coming in at number 9.
Okay.
But 8, 9, and 10 all have 9.1 ratings.
Right.
And 4, 5, 6, and 7 are all 9.2. Numbers 2 and 3 are 9.4. And then the top rated episode of the series has an average rating of 9.6 out of 10 with about 1,200 votes.
Wow. Yeah. So I'm not even sure where to begin with this. Londo. They show a sympathetic side to him in this, but damn, is it hard to be sympathetic to that man in this storyline. Like, they show that he's conflicted, they show some complexity there, but when he comes out in the council session at the end, demanding, and after all of the good-natured ribbing dynamic that he and Jakar had for a lot of season 1 and the beginning of season 2, to have him lambasting him and humiliating him in front of the station personnel, that was just so much to take from him. And I found myself really, really not liking him much at all right now.
Yeah, these characters have had a very gradual progression to the point that a lot of people have commented on their rewatch. Seeing who Londo and Jakar are in The Gathering is jarring. Mm-hmm. Because even by this point, that's not who they are anymore. Or that's not the way they feel.
Right.
Yes, they've definitely gone through some evolution here. So yeah, while we can sort of feel Londo's pain, is very much a do something about it, man, kind of feeling.
And yet you also get the feeling in his conversations with Rifa that he is just a tool being exploited. He doesn't really have any real power in the sense of agency. He just has power in the sense of he knows how to fire a particular gun, and they tell him where to point and pull the trigger. And he has moved up, and so he has some political clout, but he doesn't seem to really have any actual say. It's this Rifa person who, I don't know, the first time we saw him, he seemed like a lower adjutant of some sort, and now he's managed to finagle his way up to the chief mover and shaker behind the throne, and therefore the actual power of the throne.
We had to the point that he wasn't just caressing the throne at the start, he actually sits in it when he's talking to Londo.
Right.
So yeah, it's a dynamic where it seemed like Londo was using him early on, but I don't know how far you've gone in your X-Files rewatch, John, but one of Mulder's informants has a line that stands out to me. You are my tool. I come to you when I need you. And that seems to definitely be Rifa's attitude here.
Is that a first season Deep Throat line, or is that somebody else?
That's somebody else.
Okay, I have not seen that. Yeah. So I don't know if Londo could actually effectively do something besides just saying no. But then I really get the feeling, and I think he has the feeling that if he says no, he's back in the lower ranks of nobility with not much to his name. And he's always tried to he's always dreamed of getting power. And it's kind of ugly now that he's getting it. He said to Morden last season, "What do you want?" He said he wanted Centauri Empire back in control. And the road to that is not very pretty.
Yeah, and it is about the Centauri Empire more than it's about himself with Londo, I think. There is that much selflessness. He would prefer to have a position of power, but his drive is more Republic first and himself second, based on what we've heard and seen up to this point. But yeah, he is definitely on a path. So the cough he had in the council chambers is the first time he has coughed on screen. It will not be the last, and it was not placed at random.
Londo coughing?
Yep. And you might notice he has a new jacket. Up to this point, he has been wearing purple, and now it's black. So even his wardrobe is getting darker.
Oh, I thought he was already wearing black. Maybe it was just a darker violet, because he's had a jacket change earlier in the season.
Yeah, and then there's another jacket change here.
Okay. So Jakar that's where your heart breaks. He's a very proud man. He is very proud. He is very, and he has been very righteously indignant about his people's right to stand up for themselves against their historical oppressors. But all of that becomes something very, very different when the historical oppression is no longer historical, when you're actually losing a war against the people that you've been standing up against your entire political career. And you can see when he is having a conversation with that one, ship captain or whatever role he was, and he said, "I have one more thing I need to ask you to do." In the next scene, Jakar is asking for asylum. You can just see in every drop of his performance how much he is having to abase himself and is hating it, but knows that it's the right thing, but that doesn't make it any better.
Oh, yeah, he is. Like I said, he's definitely in a path as well. Yeah, he recognizes what he needs to do. And he has grown as a leader. If we look at what he's had, the interaction with Sheridan saying, no, sometimes you have to stop the fight for the betterment of your people, which is why Sheridan was defending the sanctuary for him. But I love the moment where Sheridan is saying, no, if you actually want to push these rules here, you are going to need a Narn on the station that the Narn citizens respect.
Mm.
So making the very strong case that says, your people will be better off if Jakar remains on this station.
Yeah. Yeah. And then to drive that home at the end, whenever Londo tries to take it away, Sheridan is able to stand up and say, nope, he's got the law on his side. He asked for asylum, and we're going to give him asylum. So, you're going to have to just get over it.
Yeah. Yeah, this worked. Well, as we said, this is a strong episode. And in case there was any doubt about whether or not the Narn Centauri conflict was the Great War, no, the Great War is still coming, and the Narn Centauri War is over.
I do have a little bit of quibble with Delenn talking about the Great War as a known factor in the future. I mean, having a general feeling that there's a conflict coming, having a general feeling that there's darkness in the future, having general impressions of things going in a bad direction is one thing. But to say, yeah, the Great War is still coming, it's this plot device we've been calling it the Great War in the opening credits, and that exists and it's going to happen in the future, that just feels a little bit too on the nose for me.
I can see that, but as we learn more about the situation than we've learned before, her attitude of inevitability will make more sense.
I was surprised we did not see Morden in this. We did, of course, have Londo contact Morden off screen and engage the services of the Shadows to attack the Narn forces. and luring them all away to where they could be attacked and eradicated while the Centauri attacked the homeworld was viciously genius. But at the same time, paying the actor to come on the stage just to say, "Yep, I'll do this for you," without having some different element of the dynamic brought forward doesn't make a lot of sense. So I guess saving him for a time where he can serve more than one purpose and not just be a plot device makes sense. It just, whenever everything was going down, I kind of thought he would show up, and then he didn't.
Yeah, it's almost the inverse of the Talia Winters issues we were talking about this semester, where Talia Winters would show up to say, yeah, he's telling the truth, and walk away and not contribute much.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It could have been just an expedition dump where they said, yeah, Talia cleared him, and then kept moving without bringing the actress in. That seems to be what they've done with Morden much. So that's another reason when people are going back on the rewatch, they're going, yeah, they forget how little Ed Wasser is physically here playing Morden, because his presence is felt much more often than it's seen.
Which is good. I mean, that's the kind of a character that is going to be memorable whenever he's not there and you can still tell that he's there. They didn't even mention him by name, but you just knew that he was there.
Yeah.
The stuff with the Minbari, with Delenn and, what's his brains? The guy on the planet. Trawl. Okay. Yeah. The first time watching through, I kind of expected that to go sinister. I kind of expected them to be lured down there for reasons and then something to go wrong. The fact that it was all exactly the way it was supposed to go was a little bit surprising. And so when I was watching it through the second time, I was able to just kind of pay attention to and appreciate and enjoy what was happening rather than being suspicious the entire time. But, normally when an unexpected voice says, hey, come down to the planet, got something for you, it's like you're being called into the unmarked white van, and you don't want to necessarily do that. That candy could turn out to be bad. But no, it was candy and some ice cream, and it was fine.
Yeah, and I can see some of that. Part of this was because this was also intended to set up a Drawl storyline. Now, they'd had to recast the character because of the availability of the original actor. So this is not the guy who played Drawl the first time. This was John Shuck. This is his first appearance on Babylon 5 out of only 2, because even though there was plans for Drawl, John Shuck ended up getting offered a really good role in a Broadway production of Hello, Dolly.
Oh.
So as much as he wanted to do both, his availability is going to be limited. Other sci-fi and genre fans might recognize him from roles in Dick Tracy. He was a Klingon ambassador in Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 4.
No, Star Trek 6 and Star Trek 4.
Yes, you're right. 6 and 4, my apologies.
I don't think his role in Dick Tracy is that memorable, but he is definitely remembered as Star Trek 4 and Star Trek 6. He is the big Klingon that causes such a ruckus and calls basically for the head of Admiral Kirk in both of those films. And bringing him back for 6 after having been such a big role in 4 is one of those moves that gives those Star Trek films a feeling of continuity and not just separate movies.
Yes. He'll also be on Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. And he shows up in Project Alf, where they did a made-for-TV movie to give Alf a happy ending after the way his series ended.
I did not know that there was a TV movie for Alf after the series ended. I had no idea that existed. Huh. Okay. I might have to check that out. Or maybe not. Maybe it's scary.
It's on DVD. I think it's also streaming. I don't know if it's Tubi or on Pluto TV, but I saw it on one of those free services earlier this year. Yeah, it's not well reviewed, but then neither is the Alf series. But yes, basically it exists to give Alf the happy ending rather than the ending he had at the series when he was being dragged away by government agents who now knew he existed.
I thought that was a fantastic ending. His Maquis role is not super memorable, but he was on the MASH film, and it's kind of a fun bit. He's Captain Painless Waldowski. He's known as the Painless Pole for a few reasons. He is Polish in background, not in birth. He's the dentist, so that's the painless part. And the Pole part is not only for his Polish background, but for his anatomical endowments. And his bit in the film is he starts to have some, at the time, questionable thoughts about his sexuality and is not sure that he can live with himself. And so he considers committing suicide, and the antics of the surgeon trio leads him to a place where he thinks he has committed suicide, but he actually hasn't, and he's still alive. Anyways, it's just kind of memorable. He's just one of those parts of the film that if you've seen the film, it probably sticks with you. I did not recognize him from that. It was just one of the things I saw in the roles, and I looked up his pictures like, oh yeah, that guy. Because he, his general appearance and shape have changed a lot between 1970 and 1995, as many people's do. But he's definitely poofier now than he was then.
Yeah, I still have to get around to watching the movie. I enjoyed the TV series, but
the movie has a very different tone. It is based directly on the novel, and the novel is a much more biting satire and less ha-ha comedy. And so the movie has some more biting satire elements. And the movie is also a lot more degradingly sexist in how it treats Houlihan and the other female characters on the show.
Yeah, one of the things that came through clearly on MASHcast is that a direct adaptation of the movie would have never landed on network TV in the 70s.
No, would not have done. And that first season of MASH is still pretty rough on Houlihan. I don't know if later seasons are or not because I haven't watched them as an adult, but it's nothing compared to how they treat her in the film. And in the film, she was played by the same actress whose name escapes me, but she was in the Where No Man Has Gone Before pilot. I want to say Sally Decker, but that's probably wrong. The psychiatrist who gets God powers along with Gary Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
That actress played Houlihan on the film.
Yeah, I want to say Kesterman or something is her real name.
That could be it. But in any case, this is not MASHcast. This is Babylon 5 30 years later. And yeah, so Drawl, you said he was going to get a storyline and he did not get anything past one more episode?
Yeah, he'll show up once. And yeah, I just, because we had John Shuck open, it was easy to pop open the MASH thing on IMDb. It's Sally Kellerman.
There it is. Kellerman. I knew Decker wasn't right, but it had some of the sounds.
Yes, who apparently is also known for A Little Romance, Ready to Wear, and Back to School.
I've not seen those. Have you seen those?
I saw Back to School, but
yeah,
I think it was like the network TV premiere of that 1986 film, so I do not remember it well, or even super fondly. It wasn't really for me.
So, the stuff with the planet down below, obviously they've been seeding that for a while. They've been letting it cook on a slow burn in the background. So whatever JMS has planned for that, he's not moving on that a lot yet, but he has moved a little bit by bringing them back down. And I wasn't entirely sure what the great machine was beyond the fact that it youthened the actor because they had to get youthened the character because they had to get a new actor. I remember whenever they were exploring it last season, they found a whole lot of machinery down there they weren't expecting. But I guess we'll find out more about all that as we go forward.
Yeah. Yeah, we will learn a little bit more about it and the scope. And again, not as much as had been planned, but we did hear a familiar name. I don't know if you recognized it, but when he was calling for Zathras, we have actually met Zathras before.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, things are coming together. It's worth mentioning that we've also seen William Morgan Shepherd before. He played Jistern, the uncle to Jakar, who was also a soul hunter in season 1 and one of the finalists to play Jakar on the series in general.
Okay. I remember his eyes from that soul hunter.
And he was a Klingon commander in Star Trek VI. Yeah, you might also know him as Captain Witwicky from Transformers. And he was in Doctor Who as the older Canton Delaware from the season 6 premiere.
Season 6
of the 2005 reboot series.
Okay.
So, The Impossible Astronaut.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a very, very long time since I've seen those episodes. Most of them only once.
Yeah. I've been tempted to rewatch now that the whole thing is on Tubi.
But yeah, his face is definitely one of those that's memorable. And I remember him from the Transformers. He's the explorer Witwicky. He's not Spike or his dad. He's the one who is I'm sorry, Sam. He's not Sam or his dad. He's the one who's like the ancestor who did the exploring and found a Megatron back in the day. But yeah, try to think of what else. The meeting with the Rangers at the end. It's kind of easy to forget that the Rangers exist. We had a name drop reference to them, I think, one episode ago. Someone said something about you're still wearing the Ranger uniform, and he's like, yeah, they're still paying me to keep an eye out. I think that was
Kefra. Yeah, that wasn't the Rangers. That was
the Night
Zach
Watch.
Allen with the Night Watch.
The Night Watch. That's what that was. Which is, I guess, a separate thing.
So you're right. It is. Night Watch is the one that's publicly known through EarthGov.
Okay.
But yes, it's a good reminder that we have the Rangers here because it will soon be much harder to forget they exist.
I imagine so. They seem to be brought into the forefront here since now Sheridan knows about them. The speech he makes about standing as, the army of light against the darkness. I don't know. I get where he's going with that in the overall mythology of the story, because we have the shadows, and the shadows do seem a very dark force, not just a political opponent. But I don't know, since we have so much discussion in our history of war being painted as goodies versus baddies, in an episode that is all about the Narns versus the Centauri, to just say an army of light standing against the darkness seems a little bit too simplistic. The fact that they're not talking about the Narn Centauri conflict, they're talking about larger elements, doesn't really seem to be clarified in his speech. It's one of those things you have to kind of read into it. So I would have liked to have seen a little bit of a different way that was done, but I guess it was effective enough.
It is. And as I said, we'll learn a lot more about the history of the conflict, and we'll see why these are the perspectives that people have. So, well, I guess not so much what is known to Sheridan at this point, but yeah.
Yeah. But I think I'm running out of thoughts.
Yeah, when we're doing our League in Session, as we call the segment, even though we often don't name it, we're just discussing the episode in general. In this case, because there, as you said, when I called it A and B plots, it was somewhat misleading or misrepresentative, because we have that one massive plot that drives 90% of the episode with the incidentals about Sheridan and Delenn, withdrawal and Rangers in there. But this is a tightly packed episode. We are just go. So yeah, as great as it is to watch, especially the performances, this was the week when I guess Peter Jurasik finally came to JMS and said, are we doing something wrong? Because they noticed that no matter what kind of writing schedule JMS had, he was always on set to watch when Peter Jurasik and Andreas Katsoulis were working together. And they thought he was dissatisfied with them. They thought he was, passing notes to the director for how to direct them. And he was saying, no, I'm there because you guys always knock it out of the park. It's the highlight of my day. So then they started getting nervous when he didn't show up when they were filming. Because he was taking the time out to see them when they were playing off each other virtually every single time.
Right.
And I do not blame him, because the way those two work, I mean, W. Morgan Shepherd is a very good actor. I've seen him enough I can say that with confidence. But had either Jurasik or Katsoulis not gotten that role, I don't know if the show would be the show it is.
Yeah. And it's, whenever we watch our stories, we get the finished product. And those stories have gone through drafts and revisions and creative changes and everything else outside of our purview. And so sometimes we find out about those changes after the fact. It's weird because there's this whole universe of what ifs of different ways a story can take. And whenever the actor portraying a character is such an obviously huge element of how that character has developed, the idea that if they had just cast somebody else in the role, we would have a very different show with very different stories today. potentially. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of weird and mind-boggling that those kinds of things can alter our reality so much.
Yeah.
And by our reality, I mean our stories and our fiction.
Mm-hmm. But no, yeah, someone else, because the writers also tend to lean into the strengths of their performers as they see them, right? When they think, oh, he is great at this sort of thing, so let's give him more of that. And I apologize for using the default male pronoun here. I just twigged that I did that, because that's often not the case. But no, yeah, I totally understand that, yes, they are feeding it. Yeah, and I can't imagine the show would have been the same if either had been cast otherwise. And not saying it would have been better or worse, but I'm having a really hard time imagining that it could be better because they just work so beautifully well together.
Mm-hmm.
So shall we move on to our last best hope with the standout character or character moment?
Yes. So I'm going to have to go with Jakar in the council chamber whenever he has sat there silently in that seat as Londo has railed and harangued against not only his people, but him personally, demanding that he be arrested, evicted, dethroned, all these other things. And he basically, his only recourse is to voluntarily resign his chair on the council. And the speech that he gives, no dictator, no invader can hold an imprisoned population by force of arms forever. There is no greater power in the universe than the need for freedom. And as he is saying that, we can see Londo in the background behind him. And it looks like Londo is about to cut him off and stops himself. And maybe I'm reading too much into Jurassic's facial expressions there, but it does seem like he chooses to let Jakar continue. Against that power, freedom, governments and tyrants and armies cannot stand. The Centauri learned this lesson once. We will teach it to them again. Though it take 1,000 years, we will be free. And it's just, having seen Jakar go through the journey he has been on and come to this point, this was a historic moment for that character.
Well, you just read the speech I was going to read, so...
I stole it from you.
Yeah. Oh, but no, it is fantastic. I will say, I was debating between that and just Peter Jurassic's performance on the way through, because you can see that, he's doing the means to an ends, and while the means are going to haunt him, he doesn't have the strength to stop because he wants the ends for the Centauri Empire. And Jurassic brings that to his performance when you see him watching the destruction of the Narm homeworld, and even see his reaction when Reef is like, yeah, of course you're going to be there watching. He doesn't want to watch mass drivers destroy this planet.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, he's perfectly willing to say, yeah, we're going to send Citizen Jakar for trial. And knowing that every other member of the Kari has been killed, he's basically saying, yeah, we're going to go kill Jakar, hand him over. So Jurassic, it's harder to pick him out, I think, because his moments are not triumphant. They're not the ones that make you want to stand up and cheer like Jakar's speech was. But Jurassic playing this character, he played him with the nuance and subtlety to prevent him from just being an evil caricature that was over the top. It would be very easy to turn Londo into a cartoon at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And while he is definitely on the path to becoming a monster, if he's not there already, he still seems very real. And yeah, you believe his actions are going to give him nightmares, but you also know it's not going to change the choices he'll make tomorrow.
Yeah. The side note I thought about while you were talking about Londo, there's the one scene where they're doing it's a space scene, so it's all digital, but they're doing the flyby of the ship while they're attacking the planet. And you fly by the window that Londo is standing in. And this is before seamless integration of 3-dimensional real shots, camera shots, and 3-dimensional computer shots. And so there's a little bit of a feeling of it's a flat panel that we're just sort of like, going by on the screen. But I do think for the day, it's about as effective as it could have been. And I enjoyed the fact that it was there, watching him observe the massacre from the safety of his ship was a thing. And the shot would look different today, but it was well done for its day.
Yeah. Yeah, they did pull it off. Like, especially when they're initially zooming in, there's definitely a 2-dimensional look to Londo in that window. But the way it's done, the performance, they even extended it because when they weren't sure how to composite it in, so it was very restrictive for Jurassic because they decided, well, he's just going to stand there, and he couldn't actually move, so he had to do the whole performance with his face. That took a very long shot because we're still choreographing it. There was some very tough space battle choreography. Apparently the Battle of Ganesh 7 was one of the hardest ones to choreograph because on the one hand, they wanted to maintain the realism of having these ships fight each other at a distance. On the other hand, they wanted them close enough so you could really feel the Narn struggle against the shadows. So it was really difficult to choreograph that one.
There's one thing I've thought about several times watching the space battles in the show that I don't know if I've actually mentioned on mic here. And traditionally, space battles in science fiction are done with some sort of laser beam where the lasers are blasted and there's some sort of concussive effect on whatever is hit. These things, and it seems to be pretty universal, if something is attacking you with a laser beam, it is slicing through your ship or puncturing your ship. Those things are destructively effective. It's just kind of devastating to watch whenever something like swaths through with some sort of, laser / phaser / whatever you want to call it, just slicing up ships.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think, G'Kar and Londo take the throne for this episode.
Yeah. And for so many more to come. But we'll get to that. And speaking of things we'll get to, shall we move on to Giving Form to the Dream, where we point out things that are going to matter later?
I'm guessing the fact that the war is over probably matters.
Yeah, this is another one of those episodes where pretty much all of it matters, and none of that comes as a surprise. Right? Londo is stepping down a darker path. The war is over. G'Kar is no longer ambassador. Drall is more involved and taking a little more active role. Sheridan knows about the Rangers and has equal authority with Delenn to command them. He now knows that Garibaldi knew but didn't say anything because he promised a friend. I think the only thing that is relevant that hasn't already come up in conversation is just noting that Kosh was present in the council chambers when he often isn't, and Kosh was present when Delenn gave equal authority to command the Rangers over to Sheridan.
He was in the Ranger room conversation.
Yes. It's just easy to miss it because Kosh doesn't speak in this episode. There's the encounter suit, but Ardwight Chamberlain didn't need to show up this week. So
they could just prop up the prop, but probably somebody's in there.
Yeah, it turned as the view piece that serves as a head, so we know that, he was active. There was some sort of puppetry work going on at least, but yes. Yeah, so he was there, but as for the rest, a lot of it is relevant, but I think most viewers would be able to point that out on their own.
All right, so more goodness next week, yeah?
Yes. Next week comes the Inquisitor. So as we are approaching the end of the season and have our massive season cliffhanger, which will be followed up slightly less than a week later. So, yes, but there's an Inquisitor coming next week. We shall find out who.
Now, the Inquisitors, those are the Sith-trained Force users who look for young Force-sensitive people and kill them, right?
Yeah, I think they're all part of that tradition that started in the Crusades. They're all coming down from there.
I don't know. I wasn't expecting this.
Yeah.
But I guess nobody expects the Centauri Inquisition.
Oh, and the Inquisitor is not Centauri. We will learn so much more.
I was just guessing. I needed an adjective.
Yes. Something other than Spanish, yes.
Right. Okay.
One of the classic Monty Python sketches. All right. So from here, I guess we just have to remind our listeners that, yes, we love feedback. We love sharing feedback. And our next time to do that will be, as usual, our next pause in the release. So we will have, this is our second in 8 consecutive weeks of new content, which will follow up with a feedback episode and then discussion of our third novel before we come back for more episodes. There are a number of ways you can send that feedback to us, 5 of which are probably fairly effective. The first of those is to send an email to Babylon5 30 years later at gmail.com.
You can also leave a comment at the website johnreadscomics.com. Just leave a comment on the post for the episode, and there is no H in post.
You can also leave comments at bureau42.com, which is where you'll find the podcasts I'm involved in and some that I'm not.
You can review the podcast at your podcaster of choice, podcast player, podcatcher, of choice. We check Apple Podcasts as a matter of course. So if you leave one somewhere else, just let us know.
Right. And the last place to reach out to us is comments on our YouTube channel. So you can comment directly about any of the episodes as they get automatically cross-posted.
Comes the Inquisitor. Seems like an anticlimactic penultimate concept, but I guess we'll have to find out. The Fall of Night definitely sounds like a season finale. After the long Twilight struggle of this week, I would expect the Fall of Night next week. But I guess we're going to have an Inquisitor come first.
We are, yes, and there will be reasons for that we will learn next week. So join us for that, and thank you for listening.
And good eating to you.